Welcome to this conversation with Dr. Michaela. She is a licensed practitioner for therapy, and today we are going to deconstruct some myths about getting help and give some encouragement and tools for other professionals out there.
That we know each other is that I am an editor for her YouTube channel, which is about helping people that are in the business of helping other people communicate better. Nailed it!
Love it. Yeah, you said it. And yeah, you've had a front row seat to everything I have to share so far, all the painstaking editing of my ums and ahs. So I have so much appreciation for you.
You do a great job. You really do speak with joy and confidence, and you're a joy to edit.
Thank you. Thank you. It helps when you feel genuinely fired up about what you're talking about. So I think that helps a lot. Yeah. Yeah.
If you were just to sit there and talk about like something you're marginally interested in, it's like,
yeah.
So the conversation that we had planned to talk about was just kind of following that train of thought of the roadblocks to getting therapy and what stops people and what myths, that's the word, what there are about that. So yeah, maybe first you would like to talk a little bit about yourself.
So yeah, I'm Michaela Buchianeri. I'm a licensed psychologist, and I also am a copywriter and copy coach for health and wellness professionals, as Katie said. And I think why I feel qualified to share about this topic is that I sit at this sweet spot intersection between being on the provider side of the healthcare, right? And so I have an insight into what brings people to therapy, what that process is like for them. I also have my copywriter's hat of helping other health and wellness professionals try to communicate with the public in ways that break down the barriers to accessing care, because that's a tremendous problem that we're facing just across the board, is that a lot of the really great parts of our training unintentionally cause us to put up this wall of professionalism. And what this can do for a lot of reasons, despite our best efforts, is put distance between us and the very people we're trying to reach. And it's hard enough to access care for many people. We don't need additional barriers. So that's why I'm so passionate about that. And then thirdly, I'm a human person who is my own therapy and will continue to do so. So I care a lot about helping spread the good word about therapy and how to go about making it happen for yourself.
Yeah, because none of you guys would be in this business if you didn't genuinely want to help people.
Right.
And it is really sad that there's so much jargon that can get in the way. And I come from a world where therapy is like, oh, it's automatically assumed I can't afford that. Physical pain is, I can't afford to be sick. I'm not going to go to the doctor until I'm literally dying, like.
Right.
But what about when your spirit is sick? What?
It's a fantastic question. And it also brings up this issue of visibility and invisibility, right? Visible pain, so with physical pain, waiting until it can't be denied, until you're actively bleeding or you can't move. As many people know, you can sustain a tremendous amount of invisible internal pain and suffering before it ever is observed by anyone else. And we want to take that seriously. I think that's why there's such a push to educate people about the importance of taking this seriously, putting it on an even playing field with any other kind of pressing issue that you would want to seek help for.
Yeah, I think a lot of people just don't know, like, when is it a big enough deal that I need to get help?
Well, I can dispel that, or I can try and clarify that right now. It's a big enough deal whenever you feel it's a deal at all in your life. I think of it as like smudges on a lens, right? If you're looking through like a viewfinder on a camera or the screen of your phone or even your glasses, you can tell when like it becomes so cloudy and so smudgy that you can't even see what's right in front of your face. I like that because it's subjective, right? For some people, a little tiny smudge in the periphery is enough. They can't move forward until they get that addressed. Other people, remarkably, can fumble around for a while and do pretty okay. It's up to you. But I say, especially given that there can be a wait for some people to actually get in, either virtually or in person, to meet with someone, err on the side of reaching out early. No one's going to evict you from therapy because you're functioning too well. So just reach out.
Oh, that's such a heart-wrenching thought of like, you have people that feel that they have to perform or demonstrate their pain. Like what about the people who have chronic pain that's literally all the time, and people are like, oh, they're
Yes.
fine. Like, no, they're not fine. They've just learned to live through it. And it just breaks my heart. Like the door opening of these topics just like makes me start to feel emotional. Just like so many people are living through trauma, and that happened when they were a kid and they never talked to anyone about it. And especially, ooh, here I climb up onto my soapbox, all fours, just especially people that come from religious backgrounds, because they were told all of this crap of just have more faith and it's all spiritual. And it's like, no, it's not.
I agree with you. And I've deliberately, a lot of therapists will ask kind of in their intake paperwork when they first are gathering information from a therapy seeker, they'll ask about religion and faith, and they will make a point of asking not just, do you identify as religious or did you grow up with a religious background? Do you identify this as a support, a stressor, or something else? Because that's very key information in understanding the framework someone is using to understand these issues. And I will say I've been encouraged, even in the time that I've been practicing, by the shift I've seen in a lot of churches and other faith organizations in embracing an understanding of mental wellness, emotional wellness, and that it's not a threat. Like the resources that we have available to us secularly are not a threat to all of the tools and strengths and value that we have within our faith organizations, that the two can actually support and strengthen one another. So I've been encouraged. I hope there's more of that on the horizon.
Oh, that's really good to hear. That just putting things into those terms of being able to ask people, is it a support or a stressor?
Yes.
Like, that's what this therapy thing is all about, isn't it? Giving people the vocabulary to identify what's going on. Like, how am I taking this in, and how is it affecting my thoughts?
Yes. And if once I become aware of that, what then becomes possible that maybe felt impossible before? Yeah.
I recently got the opportunity to have someone take me on as a pro bono client. She's amazing, and she's really asking me so many tough questions. She's like a life coach in that kind of vein of things, of really seeing the thought processes and asking me how that makes me feel. How would it look if it was the best it could be? How would it look if it was the worst it could be? She's not teaching me anything. I'm coming to my own conclusions, and it's just amazing.
And because of that process you just described, the learning is so much deeper, it's so much more personally relevant, and so it's going to stay with you that much longer, rather than if you were just spoon-fed these little nuggets. You're allowed to, this person is facilitating the process of you reaching your own understanding, which is so powerful.
Oh, man. So what was one of the other questions that I had given you?
Well, you mentioned pro bono. And so I know one of the questions we talked about is just the affordability factor, like accessing therapy, what options are out there, what to do. Like, is therapy truly a luxury, or is it something that anyone can make use of? So I can talk about that. I mean, I know you have your own experience about, I'm not sure what the process was like to find that option of pro bono therapy. I know it can be difficult for some people to identify opportunities like that.
Well, in a group that
There's a Facebook group I'm in.
there's a group for people who are deconstructing evangelicalism, and they're offering their services. And one lady gave me a free consultation, and then when she explained her costs, and I was like, that's just not possible. I know you're totally worth it, but like the work I'm doing is paying for groceries, you know what I mean?
Yes.
And so she put feelers out there among her in her sphere of influence, asking if anybody was willing to do pro bono work. And the lady that got me was like, I'm always looking out for this because it changed my life so much, and I'm just so excited to help other people's lives to change for the better too.
Yes. I'm so glad to hear that. And that absolutely, that is something that is always worth exploring, is that even if a therapist doesn't splash it across their website, for example, it's always worth reaching out and inquiring. No one's going to shun you for asking. It's not uncommon for therapists to reserve a certain proportion of their time for either pro bono work, right? So no cost or low cost. It's not uncommon for a therapist to use a sliding scale for their fee structure. And so they might have they usually do have a process for trying to determine with a client what is manageable for you and for how long and what will that look like. I think therapists are human beings too. And so there's a constant conversation on the professional side of things about burnout. And a primary consideration for people is, how am I able to meet the need, the increasing demand for my services on a population level, while still making sure that I can sustainably do this work? Meaning I don't do my work completely pro bono. I need to be compensated for my time so I can buy my own groceries, et cetera. But, you're absolutely right. People enter into this work because they want to be of service. And so it's always worth inquiring. Yeah, I think in addition to that, and my big disclaimer for all of this, unfortunately, is that it varies wildly across country and part of the world. So I think what I'll try to do is round up maybe some resources that I can send to you, that if you're willing to link them below, rather than try and just piecemeal shout them out now, I will send you some resources that folks can check out. But in just about any geographic location you happen to be in. So I'm in the United States. I know what the landscape looks like here, but in just about any country, there will be some kind of a centralized health organization. So in the UK, I know it's the NHS, and oftentimes they will have a number of different programs that have the purpose of making emotional wellness, mental health, therapy services accessible to the public, whether that's no cost or low cost. Beyond that, there are usually nonprofit organizations or kind of more special interest organizations. So what I mean by that is, let's say I am finding myself newly experiencing homelessness. There will be certain organizations who are dedicated to equipping me with resources that will help me in my situation. So in that regard, regardless of what I'm dealing with, it makes sense maybe to plug into those resources, because then they're going to be able to serve up what's going to be most helpful to me in that moment. I think I mentioned that because sometimes people think, right, do I need to already know what the word for my struggle is before I seek therapy? Do I need to know what my diagnosis is? That's a whole nother conversation. The answer is no. All you need to know is that you could use some help, as we all do at one time or another. And so not waiting until you have all the ducks in a row and have everything figured out. It's enough to just reach out for help wherever you can. I'd also differentiate between kind of what we consider crisis, like an acute crisis management kind of need, versus a more ongoing need. So if you think about, the kind of the pyramid, like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, are you familiar with that? So the bottom rung is shelter, food, water. We need our basic needs met. We need to be safe and secure. So if you're experiencing a need at that level, emergency resources are your number one priority. And usually in virtually every geographic location, there will be some kind of crisis line that you can call. So again, I'll share some resources with you that you can link below. Beyond that, then it becomes a matter of, okay, once those needs are taken care of, now maybe I have a little more breathing room and I can start to think about other components of therapy that will be important to me. So that's when people think about the person that they're going to meet with, like, oh, it's important to me that this therapist be this kind of person or have this kind of shared experience with me or this kind of cultural competency. Those are things that once you're no longer in crisis management mode, you are a consumer. You're someone who can think about what's important to you and then try and find a match with a therapist who aligns with that.
So I want to demystify the therapy process for the people who have these preconceived notions in there. So I know that's kind of a broad way to phrase it, but
like what happens behind closed doors. Yeah. Well, it can look quite different depending on a lot of factors. I mean, this is the mechanism of change, like the whole magic that happens is the alchemy between the two people. And so while there are certain ingredients that tend to predict good outcomes over time in therapy, one of the primary ones is the connection, the relationship between the therapist and the therapy seeker. And so primary goal, again, once we're past kind of meeting immediate critical needs of the therapy seeker, the priority is developing a relationship. So if you think about what goes into developing a relationship outside of therapy, it's quite similar. Establishing trust. You don't just like flip a light switch and someone trusts you, especially if their life experiences have led them to develop some understandable mistrust of new people or people in a position of authority, for example, or power. And so the initial part of therapy is a demystifying process. It's getting to know you. It's sharing stories, giving the therapy seeker the chance to share stories from their own experience, to speak to what's relevant, to ask questions of their own. And this is where therapists vary quite a bit in terms of their own style, right? Some will be much more kind of, hopefully not regimented, but more kind of linear in terms of how they proceed through therapy. Others are much more kind of open concept and choose to be directed by what the client is asking for. But there's always a plan in place. There should always be some kind of structure to ground the time together, because sometimes there's a misunderstanding, like you're just hanging out. Like you go into the therapy relationship and the therapist is just there listening and nodding and maybe jotting down notes. There always should be a give and a take. And what I'd really encourage anyone new to the experience to bear in mind, yes, it can take some time to decide if it's a good fit in therapy with the therapist, but life is too short to just be polite and hang out in a therapy dynamic that for whatever reason you don't think is going to work for you. And so there is always the opportunity and the option of discontinuing therapy and seeking someone else. And you can ask the therapist for that referral, or you can seek that out on your own. But I'll share some resources. There's a great article I'm thinking of that has kind of some guidance on questions to ask a potential therapist, ways to assess whether it's a good fit once you're connected to that therapist, and then how to measure how things are going and how to take steps to switch gears if it's not working well.
I had no idea what I was getting into. The first, and having those few conversations, because one was like a free consultation and the next one was just kind of like another, just see if it's a really good fit kind of deal. And
yes,
from that point on, I couldn't afford. But I just went into it both times with, I have no idea what's going to happen, but I'm not going to be putting my guard up. I'm just going to answer questions and be open and honest and vulnerable and just trust that they are doing their thing. And I think that makes a huge difference. But I was actually going to ask you, when you mentioned the whole concept people have of the person sitting there writing out, Do you think that the media in general, like movies and TV shows, have made people like more scared of therapy than they would have been otherwise?
I hope not, but maybe. I think I've seen a range of portrayals, some really, really bad and just off the rails, and some that are kind of closer to what we would expect to see. Unfortunately, usually it's probably the less exciting, dramatic portrayals that are more realistic. We're not going for maximum drama in the therapy room. We're going for helpful. But yeah, I mean, I think in the media, you're more likely to see a therapist that's much more confrontational or much less hands-off, or that just behaves in totally unethical, boundary crossing ways. And that's one thing I want to stress, is that even though I'm saying therapy is so flexible and it depends on who you're meeting with and all of that, especially when we consider the role of access and affordability, it's not like theater tickets where you pay a premium and you get upgraded to the box seats. No matter whether you are paying out of pocket full fee, or you're going through your insurance and it's subsidized, or you're accessing a pro bono slot or whatever, you are entitled to a therapy experience that is safe, that is affirming, that is competent, and that is inclusive and responsive to your needs. So I just really I can't stress that enough. We're not paying for better care. We are paying to access the care, but the care is something that we're all entitled to. So I hope very much that we're moving in the direction of a world where it's just a given that we can all access the care we need. But until we're there, it's really important that everyone know that.
Oh my goodness, you're just so good with the words.
So what do you think? I mean, what else do people wonder about with regard to therapy?
I think that especially people that come from a very conservative religious background, they worry that it's going to be new agey. They worry about like hypnosis, like there's different spectrums, and they go like the highest creep spectrum that they can imagine.
Yes. So I have encountered this concern before, and yes, I have lots of empathy for people that have serious fears about what the experience will entail. But with regard to hypnosis, we are already hypnotized by many of the things that we spend our time doing. Just going to say that. But really, that's where it comes down to communicating to the therapist what you're looking for. And one of the resources that I'll send you to link is that list of questions to ask a therapist. And one is deciding what's important to you. If it's really important to you that you have a therapist that is not new agey as you understand it, or that is going to align their work with a tradition and a framework that you're more comfortable with, it's a big world. There are therapists of all different stripes out there. And so there's someone for you out there. It's just a matter of communicating as openly as you can. That said, as you found, the experience of therapy is a safe kind of container in which to experiment with new ways of being and relating, meaning it doesn't have to be this wild paradigm shift, but sometimes even being pushed a little to consider something that we've never really thought about before can feel kind of different at first, but that's where change can happen. That's where we get to see ourselves grow and evolve.
Yeah. So I'd like to switch gears a bit to talk to possibly the fellow caregivers that may be watching this video. And I want to encourage them to do what you are doing, of sharing their wisdom and experience, possibly even through YouTube, and in doing it in a way that personality shows. And like how you're encouraging people in their copywriting to not just say, I am 34 years old, I've been doing this for 10 years, but
here's where I went to school.
Yeah. Nobody cares. Like,
No.
Who are you? And yeah, I didn't say that very eloquently, but you can build off of that if you'd like.
Absolutely. I think, again, I'm in this position. I know the challenges of being trained as a healthcare professional and how little space that leaves many people, or they feel it leaves them very little space to express the other parts of themselves. And, that doesn't mean, okay, so with therapy specifically, it's very important that therapists be holding space. You might have heard that expression for the therapy seeker. It's their time, it's their therapy. And so it's not just about me rolling in there talking about my day and going on and on and on about the things that are on my mind. That said, there are lots of little ways that we can let our own selves come through and bring more of the humanity of ourselves into the room or onto the Zoom call or whatever it is than many of us may think. So oftentimes we're trained to never take off the mask of professionalism. And that just not only does it do our clients a disservice because they need to see that they're with another human being, that's essential, but it also makes the work so much less fulfilling for us. We can't lose our own humanity in this. And one thing I'll say is that this past year, the experience of this pandemic, I think has really brought to the forefront for a lot of caregivers, which is a misnomer. Like, we're professional healthcare providers, but let's not get it twisted. We all need care. Healthcare providers, I think, are recognizing, like, many of us had never been in the experience of supporting our clients through the very same global stressor that we ourselves were trying to navigate at home with our own families. And I think that I'm hoping that there's more and more of a recognition of just how important it is to remember that we're humans too.
I was traveling for many years and in small groups, living out of suitcases, living on the road. And I remember how much it bugged me when people that were the leaders of the team would act like nothing was wrong, when very clearly I could see in their eyes, I could see in their actions and their body language and everything that something was wrong. And hiding that it's like feeling weak ourselves doesn't make us incapable of helping others, but
Yes.
letting other people in to our weakness creates more of a bond. I'm so passionate about vulnerability and
Exactly
how there's freedom in that.
Absolutely. And there's no blueprint or rule book for how to expect the unexpected. And my gosh, this past year again has brought us so much unexpected that I can't even imagine what it would be like to hop on a therapy call, because I was seeing clients virtually, but hop on a call with someone and pretend that there weren't these egregious social justice issues just exploding across our realities, and just proceed as though nothing had happened. Again, not only is that totally not honoring the experience of the other person on the end of the call, but it's like segmenting a whole other part of my brain and myself. I think back to your point about vulnerability. It's like we need to be able to speak to the parts that are hard, because that is what's going to foster more connection. And so I guess, again, now I'm kind of speaking back to the therapy seekers or people that are considering it, is just know that nothing is off limits. And those kinds of, when you're sitting with a competent therapist, they should be addressing those kinds of things too. Just because you came in to deal with anxiety doesn't mean you can't talk about all the different nuances of what your experience in the world is. And that can change over time too.
And I really, really want to plug Michaela's copywriting course, because it is so easy to get, it's like in the jargon. If you've never seen people who are so scared of any kind of doctor, any kind of space that is professional,
yes,
they don't know what any of those words mean, or they were led to believe that those words are just secular myths, and that's kept them from getting help. Like, there's so much fear, so simplifying your language is not easy. But this lady here, wait, I think this is where you this
yeah,
lady
wherever.
here can help you to write in a way that you can find these people and help them.
Thank you. I appreciate that so much. Thank you.
Is there anything else that you'd be really passionate to talk about?
I think, yeah, hopefully between what we talked about and what you're able to link below, people will get what they need. I guess if anyone's kind of skipping to the very end or still around, I would say just give it a chance. Therapy works. It's effective. And online therapy is effective as well. So now there's no excuse not to give it a try.
Oh, how has therapy made a difference in your life?
Well, so many ways. But what I can speak to, I'll pick one to share, is that it has really helped give me even deeper empathy for what it feels like to be sitting on the couch. And again, I'm doing air quotes because these days on the couch might be sitting on on the other side of a screen, or it could be texting, because some therapy modalities are just, text exchange. But it's given me empathy for just how vulnerable it feels to be a client, and how transformative it can feel. But I think I'm always shocked when I hear of a therapist who has not participated in their own therapy. That's kind of wild to me, because it's really important to understand what that experience is like for people. And so, yeah, I think it's deepened my empathy. And my bias is that empathy is at the root, whether we're talking about communication or just life, it's at the root of so much good that we can do.
Yes, that is one of the huge reasons that I'm doing what I'm doing with this channel. Is when we hear each other's stories, we grow in empathy, we become better people, and stepping outside of our own little bubble and comfort zone. And it's the only way that you can really care about someone, is to listen to them.
Yes.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and being a guest on my channel.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. So, the way that I end my conversations is I give hugs.
Yay!
Hugs.